opportunity to welcome these two guests to the table. So we've got Chris Pace. He's awesome. We've got David Gutierrez. They are both incredible husbands, great fathers, and on top of that, they're awesome communicators of the Word of God, ranging from whether it's writing or preaching or just naturally with their lives. They love people so well. So we're going to have a great conversation about purity. We're going to respect your time. It's going to be brief. Okay, so tune in. And so I'm gonna hand it over to Chris, and I asked them both, what is purity to you? You. And how is it that you guys get to walk in purity? So, Chris.
Yeah, well, I think the most important thing to understand about purity, first and foremost, is purity originates from within.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the ways we keep our hearts pure is to maintain a pure and clean conscience. Our conscience obviously being that moral code within the inner conviction of what is right and what is wrong. And I love what Titus says in chapter 1 verse 15. Everything is pure to those whose hearts are pure. But nothing is pure to those who are corrupt and unbelieving. Because, and I love this, because their minds and conscience are corrupted.
Wow.
So we are responsible for maintaining a clean conscience. We're responsible for the condition of our conscience. And, you know, when we start to ignore and disobey our conscience, that's when our hearts become impure. That's when our hearts start to become corrupt. So if you, feel free to speak into that.
Well, when you just kind of numb that, like if you're not aware of it, or if you ignore it, if you let it go even, then that conviction lessens. You hear the voice of God, you're not as sensitive to it.
Well, let me give you a perfect example. Like, you know, with gossiping, for instance. Like, there's, you know, when you start to talk about someone behind their backs, and it's easy to ignore that checking in your spirit. Usually, when you're talking about someone you're gossiping, you know deep down it's not right to do. Right. But, you know, oftentimes we suppress that, we ignore that. And, you know, the dangerous part of that, the more we silence our conscience, the more silence it becomes. Silent it becomes. So oftentimes we disobey our conscience, I believe, because we justify it. We, you know, for instance, gossiping. Well, I'm just venting, so gossiping's okay. You know, or like the guy who cheats on his wife. He doesn't just automatically jump in with that other woman. It began way back here when he started ignoring his conscience. He started ignoring those promptings, and you know, you shouldn't be private messaging her. What are you doing? You know, you shouldn't be staying back after hours with this woman. Like, he started ignoring that, and eventually, the more he ignored it, his conscience became seared.
That's right.
So the point was like, he probably woke up and thought, how did I get here?
Yeah, that's right. So practical for you guys in that is, even if you feel just a little conviction, right? You hear his voice even just a little bit, jump on that. You know what I mean? Right away, take that thought captive. Or whatever it looks like to have a pure conscience before the Lord, and begin to exercise that muscle, so to speak, for you. Where even just the littlest thing that might come in, you're just like, you are fierce in maintaining that pure conscience.
Yeah, and I think I love the idea of what we brought up with conscience, because conscience has to do with our spirit. And I think we have to funnel a lot about how we were made in our makeup. When we have a spirit, or we are a spirit, we have a soul and we have a body, right? And so in the spirit, man, our conscience, and I love Rabbi Brian was just with us.
I was just thinking of that,
Rabbi
actually.
Brian was just with us. He's a friend of our ministry. And he talked about conscience being the voice of your spirit. So you have your spirit that you have. And
it's an inbuilt warning system.
It's a warning system. It's the voice. So that when you don't listen to it, you're quieting that voice. And so the conscience isn't as loud anymore. But then when we were talking about purity, what I thought about was, I was thinking about, like, immediately I just thought of pure water. Not because a lot of people, when you hear purity, you automatically go to sexual purity, right? And that is a part of it. But when I thought of purity, I was like, no, I'm thinking about water, like purified water, like uncontaminated, which is really what the definition of pure is completely undefiled or uncontaminated with anything else. It's completely pure. And so I kept thinking about
God can preach, man.
All three can preach. But I just want to listen.
And interrupt.
So I was thinking about how Ephesians talks about how we are to be washed by the water of the Word, and how the water of the Word is the most pure thing. I just started doing a little study. I can get geeky about like studying the science behind it, but water, actually, the molecular makeup of it, is meant to cling to itself and cling to other things.
Oh wow!
And then whenever it touches something, it begins to dissolve. It begins to dissolve that thing over time, right? So I'm thinking, if you have defilement or you have contamination in your life, the water of the Word, what is it going to do? Dissolve that away, right? Start to break apart those incorrect thoughts, the incorrect thinking, that contamination in your spirit or your soul or your flesh. And that's why I love what 2 Corinthians 7:1 talks about that, because it's our responsibility to cleanse ourselves. It says, since we have these promises, beloved, let us cleanse ourselves from every defilement or contamination of body and spirit, bringing holiness to completion in the fear of God. And I love that. It's a picture of what it was with the priests back in the day. In the Old Testament, when they walked into the tabernacle, the first thing that they had to go was they went to the altar to make the sacrifice. But that's where the sprinkling of the blood clears our conscience. So that's the justification part, right? But right after was this thing called the laver, and the laver was this basin that had water. Pure water in it, that the priests would cleanse themselves with, to cleanse their hands, to cleanse their feet before they went to the Lord, and that's the sanctification process. So it's with the washing of the water of the Word, when you put the water in you, that's where you start to get cleansed. That's where you have clarity of thought. You're not contaminated, right? And it's the Word. The Word is what cleanses us. That's the practical. To me, is the Word is what cleanses us.
I love that. Just last week, I shared with them that same thing out of Psalms 119. How if you, I think it's Psalms 19:10, but the psalmist is like, how does a young man keep his way pure? By guarding it according to what? The Word. The Word. And then he turns to like the person of Jesus, and then he turns to the written Word in the next two passages. And so there's such power in the Word. The Word is going to wash you. The Word is naturally going to dissolve. Right?
The stuff that is not
impurities,
correct,
the impure consciences or whatever. So,
and then the last thing I want to say is just, like, we can get into the science of like how water works. And actually, I didn't know until I read it. The reality is you don't need to know the science of how water works. You just know it cleanses you, right? So if your hands are dirty, you will put your hands under the sink and you wash it because you know it cleanses. Look, when you get into the Word, sometimes you won't understand it. You don't need to know how. You don't need to understand it perfectly. You just need to know when you get in the Word, that cleansing process is already happening.
That's right.
So keep getting in the Word because that's already happening.
Well, the Word says, let us draw near with a sincere heart in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled or cleansed from an evil conscience. So if you find yourself today, maybe you have a sin consciousness, maybe you have a guilty conscience, there's hope. You can go to God. You can receive cleansing and healing and get your heart right before Him again.
That's right. So good.
Awesome.
Amen. Well, thank you guys so much. Don't y'all love them? That's so great. Well, listen.
Peace.
So also, I want to just say real quick, I want to hear from you guys. If there's anything in particular that you want for us to talk about in these conversations about purity, DM me. I would love to hear what's on your guys' heart regarding this specific topic of purity. And also, these guys are incredible communicators. I do encourage you to get connected to them in some way. They're preachers, they're writers, they're awesome. So,